present. It is 8 o'clock, so I would like to call the Thursday, November 12th school board meeting to order. Member Clerk, could you please take a roll call?
Yes. Member Corcoran.
Here.
Member Corcoran is here. Member Ketto.
Here.
Member Ketto is here. Member Olson.
Here.
Member Olson is here. Member Rayfield.
Here.
Member Rayfield is here. Member Tyson.
Here.
Member Tyson is here. Member Peterson.
Here.
Member Peterson is here. And Member Luthner is here.
All right, thank you for that. We will move to agenda item number 3, the approval of the consent agenda. What is your pleasure with the consent agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Yes. Member Ketto.
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson.
Aye.
Member Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson.
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto.
You got me. I think aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Oh, I'm sorry. My line shifted. And Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes
aye.
aye.
Just to
I
clarify, I did not vote twice. I did not vote twice. Only once.
I didn't vote at all.
Go, Alec.
So I'm an aye. Also,
Oh,
I'm
no.
sorry. My line's completely shifted.
All right.
I didn't print it out this time. I went digital.
Motion passes. I counted the ayes myself as we went around. We will move on to 4.1, adopt the canvassing returns of votes of school district general election. Member Clerk.
It is my pleasure to say that the resolution for canvassing returns of votes has been collected. On November 3rd, there was an election. There were 4 candidates and 4 seats. And Gail Tyson received 14,001 votes. Jeff Peterson received 13,594 votes. Julie Corcoran received 14,110 votes. And Rob Rayfield received 12,183 votes. And all have been certified. Their term will begin in January 2021 for 4 years. And so move to certify these results.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Couldn't have gone smoother.
Easiest election on the ticket.
Yes, and I'm humbled to be elected again, regardless of
Me
not
too,
having
Gail.
competition, but I'm looking forward to another 4 years and doing the best work that we can in our district.
We have a great
Well said.
board to keep moving. Yes, moving forward.
I would like to thank the voters for supporting the work that we've been doing at the school district. It's my pleasure to serve on this board. So with that, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson.
Aye.
Member Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson.
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto.
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. And Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to 4.2, adopt resolution authorizing issuance of certificates of election and directing school district clerk to perform other election-related duties. Member Clerk.
Thank you. So 4.2 is very similar. It is now therefore be resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 831 that the chair and clerk are hereby authorized to execute certificates of election on behalf of the school board to the following candidates: Gail Tyson, Jeff Peterson, Julie Corcoran, and Rob Rayfield. And so move to certify and execute the certificates.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I know this
Any
is a serious subject. I wish there was more appropriate certificates to hand out. I feel like this needs more gravitas because this is a real moment, and when you're looking at an election, everyone focuses on the top of the ticket, but so much work gets done by the school board, and everyone's election certificate literally looks the same.
Thank you, Member Clerk.
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Member Peterson.
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye. Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto.
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Olson, sorry. Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Sorry, Member Olson votes aye. Member Tyson. Member
Aye.
Tyson votes aye. And Member Peterson.
Aye.
Uh,
I already voted.
Yes, I know. I'm not using this format anymore.
Sounds good. So the motion passes. We will move on. Seeing nothing under new business, we will move to agenda item number 6, the Superintendent Report, COVID-19 Learning Model Update. Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screens and work our way through a presentation to discuss the COVID update and learning model update as well. First of all, let me say that it is quite humbling to lead our administrative team, and I think I speak for all those involved in this effort through these extremely challenging times for families, for our students for sure, and for our staff. And we know that there's hardly a decision or even a day that goes by that isn't challenging for our families, our students, and our staff. As we monitor our current learning models, assess the data that we work with to inform our decisions, we're led by a district core steering team of district administrators, health officials. We have regular consultation with the Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Education, and our regional support team. I have regular conversation with our FLE teacher union leadership team and gather input and perspective every step of the way. And I have a lot of input, as I know you do as well, from teachers and parents and even students with respect to our current models and how we may proceed given the level of data that we process on a regular basis. So what I would like to begin with for this presentation is to take us back to July 30th, when the Minnesota Department of Health and Minnesota Department of Education provided a planning tool and guide step for how we might establish our initial model, as well as how we might navigate and adjust models as we move forward as a school district. And clearly, the metric and the model that was provided for school districts on July 30th was a model to assess and determine how best to open the school year. And then there are additional steps that we would consider as we work our way into and now through the school year, from county data to local data to how COVID-19 is playing out in our schools with respect to cases with students, staff, students that are close contacts, the level of COVID infection or spread within our school, student to student, student to staff, staff to student, and quite frankly, our ability to staff the operation from our teachers, paraprofessionals, food service, custodians, and last but certainly not least, our transportation program. So our ability to staff our classrooms and all of the supports that go into making the educational system work. So these are all of the metrics and variables that get looped into that consideration. When we consider adjustments to our current learning model. And by the way, you're aware that we started hybrid learning at the elementary level just this week. We transitioned from in-person to hybrid learning, which is an every other day gold maroon concept. We have been on a hybrid model from day one with our secondary students. And as we look at current data and look to and consider adjustments, these are the factors we consider. We begin, as I mentioned before, looking at county-wide data. And there's a metric that we've all become familiar with, which is the cumulative COVID numbers in our three counties, in Okeechobee and Washington. Cumulative cases over a 2-week period per 10,000 residents. That data that is provided for us each Thursday is on a 2-week lag or a two-week delay. Today we received our latest update, and I'll show you those numbers here in a moment. For the 2 weeks prior to today, for that 2-week period. We also look at test positivity rate. We're all aware that there is a significant increase in the number of tests that are administered on a daily basis. And because the formula, the metric, is a product of the accumulation of, or the cumulative total, I should say, of COVID cases, we believe that the test positivity rate is an important factor to look at as well. We then zero in more regionally and locally by looking at zip code data for the districts or the zip code areas that we serve as a district. We look at the influenza-like illness rate within our schools, and in consultation with MDH have set a threshold of 5% or greater as an indication of risk within our school based on influenza-like illness, including COVID-related symptoms. We then look at, as I mentioned before, school level student and staff cases, number of cases in our schools, close contacts as well as positive cases, person-to-person spread within our schools, and our mitigation efforts and our ability to manage those school-based cases with our mitigation efforts, including our ability to contact trace as cases get presented to our contact tracing team. And lastly, and equally important, I would say, with respect to our operation, is our ability to staff our school operation and our schools. Our goals from day one has been to maximize student in-person learning and prioritize student and staff safety. That has been our goal from the very beginning, and we have not wavered from that focal point and those goals from the day one all the way through today. As you know, we started with in-person learning at the elementary level, hybrid at the secondary level, again, with the interest of maximizing in-person learning. There were other districts that could have opened in person and for various reasons weren't able to do that. We were able to do that day one, and I am just extraordinarily proud of our system, our staff, our administrative team, our entire system for being able to establish our in-person learning at the elementary level and our hybrid system at the secondary level. Quite frankly, our staff across the board deserve enormous credit for making that happen. We couldn't do that with staff reticence or reserved or being concerned about coming into our schools. And to be honest, there was concern as we started, and I know that there's concern as we move our way forward, but our staff have done just an incredible job stepping into this work and serving kids every single day. So let's take a look at county numbers. We have given a lot of attention to this, but I would stress that this is not our only metric, and you'll see that in just a moment. Again, it's county cases, cumulative county cases over a 2-week period of time per 10,000 residents of the counties we serve. And you can see here that includes Anoka, Chisago, and Washington County. Anoka, Chisago, and Washington County. And you can see the 2-week period, the ending date of the 2-week period chart below. And as we have moved our way across these 7 weeks, this 2-week period of time, you can see the steady increase of cases within each of our counties. I would point out to you the blue bar on the right-hand side of each of these counties is the report that we received today. The metric that we were given would suggest that we should be considering distance learning for all students based on the numbers that we received today. In fact, you could argue that we should have been considering that perhaps even the last 2 weeks, and we've been approaching those numbers for quite a while. But with the jump today, you can see the significant jump in Anoka, Chisago, and Washington County, with Anoka approaching 80. I think the number is 75, just over 75 cases per 10,000 residents over that 2-week period of time on average. Over 100 in Chisago, which is an alarming number, and at 60 in Washington County. As I mentioned, we're also looking at test positivity rate. This chart shows you the increase in the purple bar. You can see the significant increase in testing over time. And the dark purple line graph shows the test positivity rate, with that rate hovering around 5% for a long time. And more recently, that rate has almost tripled over that period of time. So as much as testing is increasing, the increase in our metric here is not only a reflection of more tests being given, but it's a reflection of additional cases existing in Anoka, Chisago, and Washington County. There are more cases out there based on this data, not just more testing. Let's now look at our local cases here per zip code. And we represent more zip codes, but many of the zip codes that aren't included here that we serve other school districts and other communities. 55025 Columbus and Forest Lake primarily is our biggest population area that we serve exclusively in our district. And you can see that trend line with a steady increase and a more rapid increase since the end of October. And that trend line is relatively consistent with different rates, but relatively consistent for all of the zip codes that we serve. The fact that that the gold line being Lino Lakes being higher doesn't mean that there is necessarily more cases there. It's just a much greater population in the 55014 than, say, 55073 in Scandia. But you can see the rate in Scandia is increasing slightly, but holding relatively steady. But again, that's relative to a smaller population in terms of that trend line. But again, another data point that we then can put into our decision-making process, again, with the county-wide test positivity rate and now local cases. Now let's begin to zero into what we're seeing within our schools. We track a lot of data. Perhaps this is the most pointed data and relevant data at this moment for us to be looking at. This chart shows the high school and community school cases by week, student cases by week. And you can see the kind of the steady number of cases until the middle of October 25th, and a pretty big increase over the next week or so, and a dramatic increase in the last number of days of cases at the high school. Let's add the middle school to this, and you can see the cases in the blue line of student cases, confirmed cases for the middle school relative to the high school. And then we can add the elementary with the gold bar, and you can see that the elementary as a whole doesn't match what we're seeing at the high school currently. Now, that's not to say that there aren't specific schools with cases and with significant challenges with respect to student cases or staff being close contacts or positive cases. Just to spend a moment to speak about our elementary, when we have a positive student in an elementary classroom, the entire classroom is identified as close contact. That entire classroom, therefore, is on quarantine, if you will, for that 14-day period from the onset of symptoms. And the teacher, of course, would be in remote learning as well. And we've got schools with multiple classrooms currently in remote learning based on a student close contact, student positive case, or the same for a teacher. All of these cases with a student or with a staff member warrant and require contact tracing by our contact tracing team led by our district nurse responsible for this work and leading us and advising us with our COVID response work. And it is a significant amount of time that goes into this contact tracing. So let's talk about, just for a minute, we'll zero into the high school and community school. Again, we're seeing dramatic and a sudden rise in student COVID-19 related cases, resulting in, I think the number today was over 180 students in quarantine at home based on being close contacts or with positive cases. Teacher COVID-19 related absences resulting in uncovered classrooms due to a lack of substitute teachers. So the combination of increased staff illness and staff cases and the challenge we have as a district to backfill those teachers with substitute teachers. And that has become a significant concern and a significant problem. We have close to 1,800 students mixing throughout the school day. We had that day one when the cases were lower, but now as the cases are increasing, those cases when they're in school before they become symptomatic, they're considered infectious for 48 hours prior to symptoms. Those kids are mixing throughout the school day through 5-6 different passing periods and creating a lot of exposure throughout the school day. As I mentioned, every case results in close contact tracing, which requires a significant amount of work. And when there are multiple cases in a day, it is a challenge getting to all of those cases. And we are beginning to lose ground with being able to stay up with the cases that are being presented to us. There's a multiplying impact with each case. Each case typically has identified close contacts as defined by being within 6 feet for 15 minutes. And that has been updated by the CDC as not just a consecutive 15 minutes, but now a cumulative 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. So in our case, a 6.5-hour school day or a 50-minute class period would be considered that time frame in which a student would be considered a close contact if they're within 6 feet during that time frame. And we suspect, frankly, that there are cases we're not aware of, yet they present a health risk to others. There are asymptomatic cases we're all aware of, and those cases and those students and staff, if they're asymptomatic, may be in school as well, presenting a risk to others. As I mentioned, we are really beginning to max out our ability and capacity to contact trace and mitigate risk. So all of that will kind of sets up where we believe we need to go as a district. So we'll begin with the high school. And our plan with respect to the high school is to adjust our learning model to a full distance learning model starting on Wednesday, November 18th, and continue that model through January 22nd. That would be the end of the current semester that we're in. So essentially, we begin immediately. Tomorrow will be a distance learning day as scheduled. And then Monday, Tuesday will be teacher planning and preparation days for full distance learning. Students will be in full distance learning starting right away on Wednesday, November 18th. We will evaluate and adjust the learning model at the school board meeting on January 21st. And we will either at that point need to continue with distance learning, or if cases begin to mitigate and we see a downward trend, we may be in a position to be able to return to hybrid learning at that time. But we will stay in our distance learning through January 22nd, getting us through the holiday period. As I mentioned, next Monday and Tuesday will be non-instructional days as staff prepare for distance learning. Students will receive information and guidance from their high school and community school principal, and their teachers will be communicating directly with students about their schedule and their expectation. Grab-and-go meals will be provided daily for students, free of charge. An extension of distance learning or return to in-person learning will be based on the consideration factors that I mentioned before. And that will be again be determined on January 21st. So before I take questions, I'm going to move on to our middle school and elementary school and our plans for middle school STEP. We'll start with first. We've identified 2 pathways for middle school, and you'll see similar pathways for elementary. Pathway 1 is that we remain in hybrid learning as we currently are at the middle school and the STEP program. We've identified December 3rd, which is our next school board meeting, where we will, as an administrative team, bring to the board our evaluation of our current cases in our schools, our ability to mitigate risk, the level of spread, our ability to staff the operation. And at that point, we will present our plan for adjusting learning models at the middle school or STEP, most likely if we need to make an adjustment from hybrid to full distance learning. Again, that's not being determined now. We will use the next 3 weeks to continue to operate in a hybrid model, and we will monitor cases and risk within our schools. And I would like to emphasize that families should be prepared for a transition to distance learning if local circumstances and cases persist or worsen. We expect the county cases to continue to rise, quite frankly. And if they're rising at the county level, they're going to rise at the zip code level. But we are now zeroed into how is this playing out in our schools. And as you can see from the chart, we're able currently to staff the cases and teachers that need to be out. We're able to manage the cases that we have. It doesn't mean that we're not having cases here, but at this point, we're able to manage that far better than we are at the high school level. Again, families should be prepared for a transition to distance learning if circumstances persist or worsen. The second pathway is similar. We will remain in hybrid learning. We will continue to evaluate local circumstances daily and adjust the learning model immediately if necessary. If we have a spike in the middle school or the STEP program of cases, like you're seeing at the high school, we may need to pivot to distance learning quickly and not wait until December 3rd. And again, this is a plea for families to be prepared for a quick transition to distance learning if local circumstances and cases worsen, including our ability to staff our system. I don't think I mentioned that our bus transportation system is averaging about 10 to 12, 13 bus routes, bus drivers short every day. And our transportation supervisor, John Gray, and his team rally staff in the transportation department, transportation garage, including maintenance workers, the mechanics, the administrative support staff. All of them have their Class C driver's license and can drive buses, and we bring them into bus routes to cover those routes. We combine routes, we double routes. we do everything we can to keep the operation going. At our worst, we've been 16 routes short, and just recently we lost several other bus drivers due to illness or other reasons. So when I talk about the ability to operate our system, there's a tipping point, quite frankly, with our transportation and bus drivers, just as an example. If we get to 18, 19, 20 short, we may not be able to run our bus system. We don't know that at 6 o'clock at night. We'd know that at 5:30 in the morning when people call in sick. So we need to be prepared for a quick transition on that day or on a longer term basis to move to distance learning. We have done everything we possibly can to advertise for additional bus drivers. We're grateful for those that have hung with us and continue to drive for us, and those that have signed up this year. We could use more, but we are doing the best we can, and a ton of credit goes to John Gray and his team in the transportation department. But the same is true for food service and our custodians, administrative assistants, our paraprofessionals, and certainly our teachers. There's a point at which we don't have enough substitutes to cover illness or close contacts we might have in the classroom. Again, pathway 2 at the middle school step, folks need to be ready, parents and families and kids need to be ready for a quick transition if we can't operate our system. If we can, and we can get to December 3rd, we will provide an evaluation and an update and a potential adjustment if necessary. On to the elementary and early childhood. We started, as I mentioned, our hybrid model on November 10th. We just started. We pivoted from and moved from in-person learning to hybrid. And we have seen a lot of cases begin to show up in our elementary schools, including our early childhood and preschool program. The plan is here at the elementary, similar to the middle school and the STEP program, pathway 1, that we remain in hybrid learning at this time. We've identified December 3rd as a date in which we will provide an update to our evaluation of cases and our ability to staff our operation in our schools, and if necessary, adjust the learning model based on our consideration factors. Again, families should be prepared to transition to distance learning if local cases and circumstances persist or worsen. This is not a foregone conclusion, I have to stress, but we as a system need to be ready for that transition if that transition is necessary. A parallel pathway as we work our way to December 3rd is, again, we're staying in hybrid learning, but we need to be ready to adjust quickly if cases present themselves in a way that we can't, that pose a risk, a significant risk to others that we can't mitigate and control, if we're seeing person-to-person spread within our schools, or if we are not able to staff our schools or our operations, that would result in a quick transition as well. We are guided by our learning model adjustment consideration factors. This is a different way to present the information that I shared before. Again, county data is still relevant, but it's not the guiding force. If it was, we would have moved from in-person learning weeks ago at the elementary level. We just made that transition this week. That speaks to our staff's commitment and our commitment as a system to honor our value and our goal that in-person learning, maximizing in-person learning to the extent possible, is an essential goal. Never compromising student or staff health and safety along the way. We're looking at test positivity rates. We're seeing that move up rather significantly. We're looking at local cases, school level cases, person-to-person spread within our schools, the influenza-like illness at or exceeding 5%, our school mitigation efforts and our effectiveness in mitigating risk within our school, and again, to reiterate, our ability to staff our operation. Here you can see again pathway 1 and pathway 2. The good news is that as we move to distance learning, for the high school and the community school, our kids are still learning. They're still engaged in their academics. Their classes will continue, their learning will continue, they're engaged with their peers and they're engaged with their teacher. Albeit the learning model is different. We are now in distance learning, and we fortunately, unlike last spring, have a tool that we are ready to implement fully and effectively. Our Canvas tool is the platform on which and through which we engage kids in learning. There will be synchronous learning weekly and daily for kids to engage as groups and with their teachers. There will be significant, dynamic, and powerful learning through distance learning. And at the elementary level and early childhood level, we're still in hybrid learning. Kids are still engaged in learning. As we move the high school to distance learning, we all understand the value of high school activities and athletics. We know that for many students, it is equally important on a different level and in a different way than the academics. When we think about social emotional well-being, the stress of all of the changes that are happening in families and happening around our kids and happening to our kids, mental health is a significant concern. Data is very clear about that is a significant concern. We would never put athletics or activities ahead of academics. Academics is our primary function, but activities, I think I would be mistaken to say, are just extras for kids. If you ask a kid involved in an activity, they might say that it is perhaps, kids will be honest, more important maybe than their academics. We know long term that the academics are more powerful and more important, but for the moment, the activities are a lifeline. So our plan is to, these are the considerations that, as I mentioned, academics continue in distance learning. Most activities, as we understand, can only take place in person. The social emotional connection is vital to our kids. The social emotional well-being is tied to their continued involvement in clubs and activities. Our activities are confined to the groups that participate in them. They do not and will not interact with other students in school or with other activity groups. And of course, participation is completely voluntary. So our plan moving forward is that high school activities, athletics, and clubs will be allowed to continue under, and I stress, strict mitigation protocols established by MDH and CDC. There will be limited locker room use, no intermixing between athletic levels or athletic teams. So teams will come into their practice space. They will leave their practice space without interacting with other levels or other teams. Wellness checks will be performed daily, and students feeling ill will not be permitted to participate. Wellness checks have multiple levels of responsibility. The student, him or herself, for sure, need to monitor their wellness, their illness. If feeling ill, they must not show up to a practice or a game. Parents, we ask that parents also be involved in making sure that their kids stay home. Making their kids stay home when they're not feeling well is not an easy task, but they must stay home. And of course, our coaches are prepared to do those wellness checks as they interact with kids, as they come into practice and throughout practice. Social distancing is required whenever appropriate. Protocols must be followed or activities will be shut down. So if, and our coaches and our activities director, Mr. Mike Hennon, will be very clear with our participants and our coaches that these protocols must be enforced at all times. If our students get lax or choose not to follow them, we will shut down an activity. It poses a risk to others, and we will shut down the activity. Clubs will continue to meet virtually with very limited in-person meetings that will be permitted with the approval of the building administrator, and again, under strict mitigation protocols. So with that, that is our plan moving forward as of today, and I will stand for questions. I'm going to exit I'll stay in the presentation. Perhaps there might be questions related to the presentation, but with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Do we have any questions for the superintendent?
On which slide? That was great. That was a great presentation, Steve. I have one question on this one right here, so I'm just going to ask it before we move around. So the wellness checks that isn't temperatures being taken, correct? That's just checking themselves at home before they come, or once they arrive, the coach kind of interacts and asks them.
Yeah, that's right. And you can see when kids don't look well. We know kids, and I think we're all guilty of it pre-COVID, where it's just a cold and we fight it out. Well, this is a different day and different requirements and expectations. Don't fight it out. Maybe it is just a cold, but stay home. And when kids come and they don't look well, coaches are going to intervene and say, you need to go home and rest and do not come back until your symptoms subside and you have a clearance from our nurse and our health department and our COVID team. The same goes true for home. We would ask parents, and our wellness checklist does ask parents and kids to be doing temperature checks before they leave for school, or in this case, come for activities.
And then our masks, are they masking at all when they come to a practice? Like when they come in the door, are they they're having it on, taking it off, putting it on when they're not engaging in the sport, or they're listening to the coach? Are they? That's
correct. Our masking mandate, state executive order, and our expectations are mask wearing at all times unless they're involved in a physical exertion, physical activity. So when they're on the sidelines watching practice or outside of an activity, masks are on. When they're on the bench during a competition, we're doing the best we can to distance and wear a mask on the bench. The JV team, if they're not dressing up, they are not sitting on the bench or near the bench. They're spread out in the stands. Again, exercising all the distancing requirements that have been part of our protocols from the beginning.
Good. That sounds very good. Thank you.
I have
Redfield, did you have something? Oh, hold on.
Yeah, I guess my question is Superintendent. It seems like a lot, like when you look at the activities, a lot of the things we're kind of worried about is, we can control a lot of what happens when the students come into our space. But I think if you're looking at the high school, the activities, all these different students coming in, a lot of the things we're dependent upon are the way the families are treating the seriousness of COVID at home, right? And how do we, I really want those activities to continue, right? But how can we talk to parents and talk about the importance of, talking to kids and saying, hey, it's important that we mask up, we take care of these things, because we do not want, if we're not safe when we're coming into the school, then we're going to lose the ability to do these things, which are so positive. You see what I'm getting at? Is that I kind of feel like we're trying to do everything we can, but we also need to be really in a partnership with parents on this.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think that's understood by our parents. We know that kids let their guards down, perhaps easily, and this isn't the time to do that. These activities are, I know, important to our student athletes and those involved in clubs, and they want them to continue as much as anybody, and perhaps more so. So again, this will be a partnership with families and with our participants, our coaches, making sure that we stress all the mitigation practices that we possibly can. I'm not in a position for sure to guide families on what students should do outside of school. That is clearly the responsibility of parents. I'm stating the obvious, but I think we all understand that the more kids are restricting exposure outside of school and outside of these activities, I'm quite confident that our activities will be safe. It's the exposure outside of these activities. And given the highly contagious nature of COVID-19, it's hard to do. But limiting exposure outside of these activities is going to be really important.
All right, thank you.
All right, Member Luthner, then Member Corcoran.
Yeah, and this is, again, on school activities, sports. And I know we often just think everything's run by the school, but a lot of what's at the elementary and middle school is technically through community ed. Is that still under this policy in general?
Absolutely. So community ed has started when that was permitted late spring, along with FLAW and other activities. There are very strict mitigation requirements and procedures and protocols in place there as well. So those activities are continuing under the similar protocol. Same with the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association FLAW activities. I know activities director Mike Hennon has been in regular contact with those organizations and coaches to make sure that we have open communication between those teams. If they learn of a positive case with the student, that we get that information so that we can do our exclusions and quarantining from schools and activities as well. So again, we limit exposure. So yes, those activities are continuing, but again, under the same strict protocols that we have here.
Member Corcoran and then Member Olson.
Well, first of all, Steve, I want to thank you for a great presentation. I know how much work and time it takes to just accumulate all the information and to communicate with all the staff and parents and everyone involved in all of this. But I wanted to just do a quick thank you to all the parents and staff that sent emails, very well written, they were very kind but concerned emails. And I just want to let everyone know that they were read. And those things are all, that's part of the cornerstone of the decisions that are made, is everyone's willingness to talk about things and trying to work out the best for our students and our staff. So that is very important to us. So thank you again for all that. And also, sports, I'm one that loves all the sports, but that's another thing that parents really need to know, that those are a critical part of their lives too, but education is what we do for our schools. And you can only limit so much in the schools if they're not limited at home. But also the coaches too have to really enforce that with the teams, how important it is to stay healthy, and that it will jeopardize the ability to have that sport that they love to play. So that's all I wanted to say on that. But thank you for a great presentation. And again, thanks for all the emails and communication from staff and parents.
Member Olson?
Yeah, thanks for that, Julie. I also want to thank the steering committee and all of our staff for clearly doing everything possible to keep our kids in school and in a safe environment. Steve, my question is, how are spectators, will there be spectators allowed at these events?
Yeah, the State High School League has governed that, and there are a certain number of permitted guests at an event, and it basically breaks down to participants and their parents.
All right, Member Ketto?
I guess I'll finish this roundup. There are a couple of things for me personally that came up. I have to say that I feel for all of the families. I right now have adult children, so I don't have kids in the school system right now. But I try to imagine what it would be like for all of you families that have kids in the schools and what you're dealing with COVID. There are two things that stuck out for me this week that I thought I'd bring up briefly to back up what Massey has said. Number one, it's if you didn't see it, there's a news report out there about a 17-year-old girl in Wayzata who was a dancer. She danced on a dance team. She instructed dancing. She was highly athletic. She was in perfect shape, very well, doing real well. She got a cough one day and she ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks. She almost died. So, you see the numbers and you say that it's not going to happen to us, and they're younger than, the 85-year-olds who might be dying from this. So it's not a concern. It is a concern because that 17-year-old had nothing going against her, but she got it. She got COVID and she almost died from it. So it's a very serious thing. And I think that may help with your discussions with some of your kids about how serious this can be for high school students as well as for adults, besides the fact that they can carry it to maybe an older generation that might be affected by it. That's one. And last, I'll leave you with this. On the news tonight, we heard that Dr. Osterholm, who works for the University of Minnesota and is a disease specialist, probably equal to Dr. Fauci on a national level. Osterholm works for the university here in Minnesota and is, as I said, a disease expert. And his input was he believes for the next 4 to 6 weeks, we should totally shut down to save ourselves from this disease. So I'm not suggesting that. I think we're on the right path exactly where we are. But I am saying that we need to take this very, very seriously. I think we do need to continue to monitor it. We need to make adjustments as necessary based on one of the best disease experts there is out there. And I'll end by saying I do believe in science and I do believe in what he says. So,
Thank you, Member Ketto. Member Tyson, I believe you were next, and then we'll go to Member Luthner.
Well, I also wanted to thank the parents for their emails that were very thoughtful. They went to great lengths to explain what their feelings are, and you can tell how much they care for their students and their children being a student in our school. But going back to the models, I wanted to mention that it's just very apparent to me that we go to great lengths to accomplish that goal number one of getting our students in front of their teachers as much as we possibly can. I was just amazed when Steve talked about how they're just juggling bus drivers and they're getting mechanics to drive, and we were 16 routes short. I mean, we are really going to great lengths to get our students in front of their teachers. But I think these models and the graphs were very telling, and the models that we've put forth, I think, are very pragmatic approach. I mean, we're going to have to do what we need to do when the time comes. So I want parents to rest assured that we really want your student in front of their teacher as much as they can. That's Steve went over that's been our number one goal since day one. So I think it's just imperative that we follow these models, pathway 1 and pathway 2, and just be ready to make that switch when the time comes. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Tyson. Member Luthner?
Mine's kind of jumping to a different thing that I feel is not as clearly spoken about in the rest of the presentation, which was a great presentation. I appreciate the attention to detail. One odd wrinkle that I've noticed, because I do have school-age children, one in the middle school and 2 in elementary. Middle school, when she needs to be excluded for whatever reason, it's very easy for her to continue gaining education. She just hops on the distance learning model, and it's almost seamless. And I have no worries about her learning in the middle school model, whichever way it is. On an elementary level, though, when you're excluded because of a sibling, or you're waiting on a test, or you're on the dance team from an outside factor and now you're on 2 weeks, your class is still in session and you're depending on the teacher sending you special on the side learning materials. And our teachers are doing their best. And when it's 1 student, I'm sure it's much easier. And when it's 2 students, okay, they can still juggle that. But when we start getting more than 2 or 3 students, and these are students that aren't sick, they're on quarantine restriction because of a sibling or because of an exposure outside of school, and they're making the safest choice, they're not in front of their teacher. And that starts becoming an impact on not just the child, but the teacher trying to get as much in front of them as possible also. And that I can see the stress in some of our teacher emails saying, I'm doing my best and I'm being split 3 ways. I have gold, I have hybrid, and I have home. And that's a tall order. And I appreciate so much effort that is going into making this work. But when we look at this like it's a binary decision, we have kids in front of teachers in classrooms, and or distance learning where they're somehow not in front of their teacher, but I think they actually may be more in front of their teacher holistically if their teacher is able to focus on the entire class every day virtually. And that's not plan number 1. But when we're looking at the decision, think about the kids that are making the safest decision in quarantining and realize they're part of the kids that are trying to work through this also. So I agree with our current method, and I believe that in our current method, if there's a class that has 2 or 3 children out for COVID, it flips to a distance classroom. But if you just have them on quarantine for suspicion, then they're sort of the loosest link, the missing link, sorry. Loose end, mix my metaphors. So I'm living the life, and I empathize and sympathize with every parent email that I read today. And then I see all the teacher ones also. And I'm friends with so many teachers who share that they're working morning, noon, and night to try and make it work and cover for coworkers and fill the holes. So thank you to all the teachers doing your very best. And please, parents that are listening, know that every situation is more complex. It's not in or out binary.
Thank you, Member Luthner. Member Rayfield, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So we generally, we've been going down the course of moving to more remote learning. But for the high school now, we're talking about going full remote and or distance learning. And are we thinking at all about the metrics we'd use to go back to hybrid at some point? I mean, it'd be really nice at the high school if the numbers were to come down, that we could get the kids in for their last quarter, as especially for the seniors. And I know it's kind of hopeful and dreamy that the numbers might go down, but have we thought about what happens if we start to recover?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just say that there is no assumption here that this is indefinite, that this is for the remainder of the year. We are clearly monitoring the data on a regular basis. Our next benchmark date will be January 21st for the high school and community school. And if the data begins to stabilize and go down, and we have a better handle on the cases that might be appearing in our schools, and we're still able to staff and operate our system, we will bring kids back into hybrid. If things get tremendously better by spring and we can bring kids in full time, we're going to do that too. There is no assumption that we're never coming back. The minute we are able to do that safely, we are going to do that.
It's a hopeful thought, but
well, yeah, and who knows? We're on an upwards trajectory for sure, but we remain optimistic that somehow we're going to get a handle on this with therapeutics and vaccines, and when that day comes, we will be on the other end of this, and we will be working our way back to what we do best, and that's kids in our schools and in our classrooms.
All right, thank you.
We have any further discussion? Any further discussion? I would like to say, one, I'll echo the sentiments of other school board members. I do read all of the emails, and I do appreciate, especially in this politically charged time, the polite nature that the emails have been written, and with the amount of respect that they are written. I try to respond to all of them. I don't always get to all of them, but I really do try to. I really appreciate all the hard work our staff is doing, the administration, the teachers, all the way, the bus drivers, lunch, para. It takes every level to keep this operation moving right now. The one thing I do want to say when it comes to activities is it is going to take everybody's help to keep these things going. We need to be extra cautious when we're at events. We need to be making sure people are wearing masks. It's going to take the community as a whole to keep this operation going, not just our parents, but everybody who lives in this community to participate in the recommendations from the CDC and do what is necessary so that we can keep the school open. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all our parents for being patient. And our goal is still to keep your students in our school district in front of their teachers. With that, I'll ask if there's any further discussion.
I have one last thing. I am hearing fantastic things about Ranger Academy. So just to give them their due, that they have created it from whole cloth and are doing great.
Dr. Massey, do you have anything further?
No, that's, I would just say, Member Luthner, that is spot on. Those folks got after that from day one and are making it work in a phenomenal way. So I thank you for that tribute to them.
All right, with that, if we have nothing further, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Member Clerk, would you please take a roll call?
Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran votes aye. Member Ketto.
Aye.
Member Ketto votes aye. Member Olson.
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye. Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Member Rayfield votes aye. Member Tyson.
Aye.
Member Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson.
Aye.
Peterson votes aye. Member Luthner votes aye.
All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.